The lecture hall on Station Covenant was big and round like a bowl. Seats went up in circles, higher and higher, and students of all kinds sat in them. Some had 4 arms. Some floated in the air like clouds. Some were made of crystal that sparkled under the lights. And in the middle of all these strange beings sat 5 humans. Professor Velis stood at the center of the room. The professor was tall and thin, and their skin was see-through like glass. Under that skin, soft lights moved and changed colors. These lights showed what the professor was feeling. Right now, the lights were calm and blue. "Welcome to my class," Professor Velis said. The words came through a small device in each student's ear, changing the professor's language into words they could understand. "This is comparative cultural ethics. Here, we will learn how different species think about right and wrong." David Park sat very straight in his seat. He was a human man of 32 years. His black hair was cut short, and his dark eyes moved around the room, looking at every door and every corner. This was a habit he could not stop. He had been a soldier for 10 years, and soldiers always look for danger. Next to David sat Grace Kim. She was a small woman with glasses and tired eyes. At 34, she was the oldest of the human group. Grace was a doctor, but not a normal doctor. She was a combat medic. This meant she fixed soldiers when they got hurt in battle. She had done this work for 12 years. Behind them sat Hannah and James Lee. They were twins, brother and sister, both 28 years old. They looked alike with their round faces and sharp eyes. Hannah had been a pilot who flew gunships. James had commanded a big warship called a destroyer. They did not talk much, but they did not need to. Twins often understand each other without words. At the end of the row sat Brian Cho. He looked half asleep, his body relaxed in his chair. Brian was 30 years old and worked with computers and signals. In war, he broke enemy communications. He made their radios stop working. He crashed their systems. It was quiet work, but very important. These 5 humans were the first of their kind to come to this school. The Galactic Academy was 300 years old, and it was very famous. Students came from 47 different species to learn here. But until now, no humans had ever been allowed in. Professor Velis let the lights in their skin turn to a warm yellow color. This meant they were curious. "Before we start our lessons," the professor said, "I want to know my students. So I will ask a simple question. In your culture, what is the most important thing a person can do?" A student with 4 arms raised all of them at once. This was a Rilthian. "Creating new life," the Rilthian said. "Having children. This is the most important thing." A floating cloud of gas pulsed with light. This was a nebulite. "Harmony," it said. "Bringing different things together to make peace." One by one, the alien students gave their answers. Discovery. Building new things. Growing beyond your limits. Helping others. Each answer was kind and good. Professor Velis nodded at each one. The lights under their skin danced with interest. Then the professor looked at the 5 humans. "And what about your species? What do humans think is the most important act?" The 5 humans looked at each other. David's face became hard like stone. Grace looked down at her hands. The twins shared a quick glance that said many things. Brian, who usually looked sleepy, sat up a little straighter. It was Brian who spoke first. His voice was calm and easy, like he was talking about the weather. "Taking a life, Professor. Most of our thinking, our laws, our beliefs about gods and spirits, they all circle around that one thing. When is it okay to kill? When is it wrong? What does it mean when you take a life?" The room became very quiet. The kind of quiet that feels heavy. Professor Velis's lights flickered to a color no one could read. The professor was quiet for a long moment. Then they spoke again, very carefully. I see. Then let me ask another question. This is just for learning purposes. You understand? The professor paused. Every alien in the room was watching. Among you 5 humans, who has killed another thinking being? The quiet became deeper. It pressed down on everyone like a weight dot. Then David Park raised his hand. He did not do it fast or slow. He just raised it, like answering a simple question in school. His face showed nothing, but his eyes looked far away, like he was seeing something that was not in this room. James Lee raised his hand next. A moment later, Hannah raised hers too. The twins did not look at each other. Brian Cho raised his hand last. He did it the same easy way he did everything. But the muscles in his neck had gone tight. 4 hands in the air. 4 out of 5. Grace, Kim kept her hands in her lap. The other students reacted in ways that showed their fear. The Rilthians pulled all their arms close to their bodies, trying to make themselves small. The Nebulites floated up toward the ceiling, getting far away from the humans. A Sharn, a being made of crystal, started making a high sound. Like a sad song. Professor Velas's lights had become very dim. Almost dark. 4 of 5, the professor said quietly. 80% of you. You seem surprised, Professor, David said. His voice was steady and calm. Can I ask what number you expected? In all the species that have come to this school, Velas said slowly, you are the first students to say yes to that question. In 300 years, only 12 students have ever raised their hands. All of them were seen as broken. Criminals, people with damaged minds. Hannah made a short sound that was almost a laugh, but not a happy one. Professor, every human in this room was a soldier. We served in the Terran Defense Forces. Our government did not pick us even though we fought in wars. They picked us because we fought in wars. Your government sent soldiers to a school for learning about culture? They sent veterans, James said. That means people who have finished being soldiers. We have seen what is out there in space. We have met other species. Sometimes we made peace. Sometimes we did not. Our leaders thought that experience would be useful here. Professor Velas turned to look at Grace. She was the only human who had not raised her hand. And you, Dr. Kim? You did not raise your hand. Grace lifted her head. Behind her glasses, her eyes looked very tired, like she had not slept well for many years. I am a medic, Professor. My job was to save lives, not to take them. But you worked with these soldiers? For 12 years. And in all that time, you never. I never pulled a trigger to kill someone, Grace said softly. But I have held men while they died. I have heard soldiers beg me to stop their pain when I could not save them. I have had to choose who got medicine when there was not enough, knowing the ones I did not choose would die. She stopped for a moment. I do not know if my hands are clean, Professor. I only know I never raised a weapon. The room stayed frozen. Some alien students had moved their seats away from the humans. Without even knowing they did it, Professor Velas seemed to shake themselves, like waking from a bad dream. I think we will end today's class early. Tomorrow, we will talk about how different species think about death. Students began to leave the room. They walked around the humans, keeping far away from them, like the humans were dangerous animals. Humans, the professor called out. Please stay. The lecture hall emptied until only 6 beings remained. 5 humans and 1 professor. The room felt bigger now and colder. The lights on the walls seemed too bright. Professor Velas moved closer to the humans. The lights under their see-through skin had settled into a steady pulse. The color was something between purple and gray. None of the humans knew what this color meant, but they could guess. The professor was confused, maybe scared, definitely curious. I must understand, Velas said. Your species has only been traveling between stars for 200 years. That is a very short time. But in those 200 years, you have fought 3 big wars in space, 17 smaller fights at borders, and too many wars on your own planets to count. The professor's voice dropped lower. The number of dead is very, very high. We know, David said. His voice was dry, like paper. But why? The professor came even closer. Whatever fear they felt, their need to understand was stronger. Most species stop fighting long before they can travel to the stars. The Rilthians have not had a killing in 6,000 years. The Shorans cannot even think about hurting another being. Their crystal bodies make them feel pain when they hurt others. Brian shifted in his seat. Professor, can I ask you something? When Rilthians have a problem with each other, what do? They talk. They think deeply. Sometimes they stay away from each other until they can be at peace. And the Shorans? They cannot imagine a problem that would make hurting someone worth it. Their minds do not work that way. Brian nodded slowly. His sleepy look was gone now. His eyes were sharp and clear. That is the thing, Professor. Sir? Humans can imagine it. We can imagine almost anything. And the space between imagining something and doing it. He held up his hands, palms facing each other, close together. Sometimes that space is not very big. Hannah leaned forward in her seat. Professor, we are not monsters. Every one of us who raised a hand carries a weight because of it. Some of us do not sleep well. Some of us cannot be in crowds without feeling sick. We all have things we do not talk about. She looked at her brother James. Something passed between them, some shared memory. But we also know that sometimes fighting is what keeps the people we love safe. You speak of protection, Valis said. We speak of what is real, James answered. The universe is not safe, Professor. We've met species out there who wanted to kill every human. They would have destroyed our colonies if we did not fight back. We have faced pirates and raiders and things so strange they do not have names in your books. He paused. Did you know that before humans could fly between stars, we almost killed ourselves? Twice. We almost ended our own species. I read the history files. Then you know we are still here. Not because we stopped being able to fight. Because we learned to choose when to fight. Grace spoke quietly. Her voice was soft but steady. Professor, can I show you something? She touched a small device on her wrist. A picture appeared in the air, made of light. It showed a little girl, maybe 4 years old. The child had black hair and 2 ponytails and a big smile. She was playing in a garden full of flowers. That is my niece, Grace said. Her name is Lily. She lives on a colony called New Bizen. 3 years ago, bad people attacked that colony. Raiders. They wanted to take everything and hurt everyone. The soldiers who protected that colony fought for 6 hours until help came. 22 soldiers died. 47 raiders were killed. She looked at the professor. My niece does not remember any of it. She plays in that garden every day, happy and safe. Because people like David and Hannah and James and Brian stood between her and the ones who would hurt her. The soldiers who died, they chose to be there. Every single one. They knew they might die. They chose to take that risk anyway. Professor Velis was quiet for a long time. The lights under their skin moved slowly, like clouds on a windy day. Dr. Kim, you said you never took a life. But you worked as a military medic for 12 years. Why? Grace's tired eyes met the professor's strange gaze. Because someone has to pick up the broken pieces, Professor. Someone has to hold the dying and tell them it will be okay. Someone has to save everyone they can. She stopped, and something painful crossed her face. The others carry the weight of the lives they took. I carry the weight of the lives I could not save. I do not know which weight is heavier. David spoke then. His voice was rough, like rocks grinding together. Professor, in human history, there have been many people who believed fighting was always wrong. Some of them were very good people, saints, holy men and women. They believed that no reason was good enough to take a life. That sounds like wisdom to me, Velis said. Maybe, but here's what I know. David's eyes were hard like black stones. Those people were only able to believe that because other people like me, were willing to fight. While they spoke of peace, we stood on walls. While they prayed, we bled. Their clean hands were only possible because our hands were dirty. That seems like a dark way to see the world. It is the way the world is, Professor. I did not make it that way. I just live in it. Hannah stood up from her seat. She walked down the steps until she was close to the professor. Velis stepped back a little, their lights flickering with surprise. Professor, I have killed 31 people. Hannah's voice was flat and calm. 31? I remember every single one. I see their faces when I close my eyes. Some of them were bad people who wanted to hurt others. Some of them were just soldiers like me, following orders they did not choose. Her voice cracked a little. I do not enjoy what I did. I do not feel proud. But if I had to do it again to protect innocent people, I would. That is what being human means. We do hard things so that others do not have to. James walked down to stand beside his sister. You asked who has taken a life. But maybe a better question is, who has saved one? He put his arm around Hannah. The twins stood together, supporting each other like they had done since they were small children. Every life I took to save others. Every ship I destroyed was aimed at colonies full of families. Children, old people, normal people who just wanted to live. James's voice was steady, but his eyes were wet. I do not expect you to understand. Your species learned to be peaceful before they reached the stars. You never had to make the choice we make. But do not look at us like we are broken. We are not broken. We are what we needed to be. Ryan stood up too. He walked down to join the others. Professor, humans have a saying. Those who do not study history are doomed to repeat it. We study our history very hard. We know what we are capable of. The good things and the bad things. We do not pretend to be better than we are. Now only Grace remained in her seat. She looked at her 4 friends standing together, then at the professor who watched them with those strange, unreadable lights. Professor Velis, Grace said softly, you will teach us about ethics, about right and wrong. But I think we might teach you something too. What is that, Dr. Kim? Grace stood up slowly and walked down to join the others. The 5 humans stood together, shoulder to shoulder. That the universe needs both kinds of people. The ones who fight, and the ones who heal. And sometimes, if you are very unlucky, you have to be both. Professor Velis looked at the 5 humans for a long moment. Then, slowly, the lights under their skin changed to a color the humans had not seen before. It was warm, like sunset, like a fire on a cold night. I think, the professor said carefully, that I have much to learn about your species. David almost smiled. We all do, Professor. We all do. Days passed on Station Covenant. The story of what happened in Professor Velis's class are everywhere. It moved through the halls like wind, touching every ear, reaching every species. The humans were watched wherever they went. When David walked to the food hall, aliens stepped out of his way. When the twins went to the library, other students left their tables. When Brian used the computer rooms, the beings around him became very quiet and very still. It was not hate. It was not anger. It was something else. Fear, maybe. Or confusion. Like seeing a strange animal for the first time and not knowing if it would bite. Grace noticed it most of all. She was used to being trusted. Medics were always trusted. Hurt people did not care where their doctor came from. They just wanted the pain to stop. But here, even the sick aliens looked at her with careful eyes. "They think we are dangerous," Hannah said one night. The 5 humans sat together in David's small room, sharing a bottle of something Brian had found. It was not alcohol, but it was close enough. "We are dangerous," James said. He was not bragging. He was just saying what was true. "We are also more than that," Grace said softly. "But they do not see it yet." David stared at his drink. The liquid inside was blue and glowed a little. "Give them time. Fear is natural. Trust takes longer." Brian laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Time, sure. How many years did it take Earth to trust anyone? How many wars did we fight before we trusted each other?" No one had an answer for that thought. Professor Velas still taught the class. The professor did not treat the humans differently than before. Questions were asked. Answers were given. But the other students stayed far away from the human seats. A circle of empty chairs surrounded them like a wall. 3 weeks after the first class, Professor Velas asked the humans to stay after the lesson. This had happened many times now. The professor seemed hungry to understand them, like a scientist studying a new kind of star. "I have been reading about human history," Velas said. The lights under their skin were moving in slow circles. This meant deep thinking. "I read about your world wars, your civil wars, your religious wars, wars over land, wars over ideas, wars over nothing at all." "Sounds about right," Brian said. "But I also read about other things." The professor's lights grew a little brighter. "I read about humans who ran into burning buildings to save strangers. I read about soldiers who threw themselves on explosives to save their friends. I read about doctors who traveled to sick places, knowing they might die, just to help people they had never met." "Also sounds about right," Grace said. "How can both things be true?" Velas's voice was not accusing. It was honestly confused. How can the same species do such terrible things and such beautiful things? David leaned back in his chair. "Professor, do you know what makes humans different from most species? I am beginning to think I do not know anything about what makes humans different. We choose." David's voice was low and serious. "Every moment of every day, we choose. We can choose to hurt or help, to destroy or to build, to hate or to love. The choice is always there, inside us, pulling in both directions." Hannah nodded. The Rilthians were born peaceful. The Shorns cannot imagine violence. They do not have to fight their own nature. But humans? We have to fight ourselves every single day. And that is why, James added, when a human chooses to be good, it means something. It is not easy for us. It is not natural. It is a choice we make over and over, against a part of ourselves that wants something else. Professor Velas was quiet. The lights under their skin had stopped moving. They just glowed soft and steady. "That sounds exhausting," the professor finally said. Grace laughed. It was a real laugh, not a sad one. "It is, Professor. It really is. But it is also what makes us strong. We know our dark side because we fight it every day. We know what we could become if we let ourselves. That knowledge makes us careful. It makes us try harder to be better." "I think I need time to understand this," Velas said. "Take all the time you need," David said. "We are not going anywhere." That night, the alarm came. It started as a low sound, so deep that the humans felt it in their bones before they heard it with their ears. Then it grew louder, filling every room and every hall with its terrible voice. "All students to shelter zones," a calm voice said from the walls. "Unknown ship approaching. Hostile signals detected. This is not a drill. All students to shelter zones immediately." The humans moved before they even thought about it. 10 years of training kicked in like a machine starting up. David was on his feet first, his eyes scanning for danger. Brian was already touching his wrist device, trying to get information. The twins fell into position, one on each side, ready to move in any direction. Grace grabbed a small bag she always carried. It held medical supplies. She never went anywhere without it. "Move," David said. One word. That was all they needed. The halls were chaos. Aliens ran in all directions, their different bodies moving in different ways. Some flew, some crawled, some floated. All of them were scared. The humans moved through them like fish swimming against a river. They knew where they were going. The shelter zone was on the lowest level, deep inside the station where the walls were thickest. They found Professor Velas in the hall. The professor was standing still, frozen like a statue. The lights under their skin were going crazy, flashing in all colors, too fast to follow. "Professor!" David grabbed Velas's arm. "We need to move, now." "I do not. I have never. The emergency plans say." Hannah took the professor's other arm. Her voice was firm but kind. "It is okay. Stay with us. We have done this before." Together, they ran. The shelter zone was a big room with thick metal walls. Inside, dozens of students were already hiding. They pressed against each other, different species touching for the first time, all fear of difference forgotten in their shared terror. A Rilthian student saw the humans come in. "What is happening?" it asked. All four of its arms were shaking. Brian had managed to connect to the station's information system. His face was lit by the glow from his wrist device. "Pirate ship, Marauders. They are a human criminal group that lives in the far parts of space. They probably thought a station full of students would be easy to rob. Human criminals?" The Rilthian's voice went high and thin. "Your species is attacking us?" David's jaw tightened. A muscle jumped in his cheek. "Our species. Our responsibility." The whole station shook. Something had hit the outer walls. The lights flickered once, twice, then came back on. "They are cutting through the docking area," Brian reported. His voice was calm, like he was reading a weather report. "Station defenses are weak. Made for stopping space rocks, not attack ships. The station has 12 guards. They have light weapons. They have never fought a real battle." "How many raiders?" James asked. "Looks like 30 or 40. What about the guards?" "They are trying to set up a defense, but..." Brian shook his head. "They will not last long." The 5 humans looked at each other. No words were spoken. None were needed. They had worked together for too long. They could read each other's thoughts in a glance. 4 against 40. Bad numbers. Very bad numbers. The bad numbers were better than no fight at all. "Grace," David said quietly. "Stay with the civilians. If things go wrong, you are their only hope." She nodded. Her face was pale, but her hands were steady. Medic's hands. Healer's hands. The 4 soldiers moved toward the door. Professor Velas stepped in front of them, lights flashing with alarm. "What are you doing? Where are you going?" Hannah looked back. Her face was calm, almost peaceful. "Our job, Professor." "You will die. There are 40 of them." James smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who has already accepted what might come. "Then we will have to be very convincing." They left. The heavy door closed behind them. Grace watched them go. Then she turned to the room full of frightened aliens. "Okay," she said, her voice strong and clear. "Does anyone here know anything about medicine? I am going to need help." The halls of Station Covenant were dark. Emergency lights painted everything in shades of red, like the inside of a dying heart. Somewhere far away, metal screamed as the raiders cut through the docking bay doors. David moved first. He was the oldest soldier among them, the most experienced in ground combat. The others followed his lead without question. "Brian, what can you give us?" David's voice was barely a whisper. "I am in the station system. I can control doors, lights, atmosphere. Some security cameras still work." Brian's fingers danced over his wrist device. "The raiders are entering through Bay 7. They will come up through the main corridor. About 5 minutes. Weapons?" "Nothing. This is a school. They do not keep weapons here." David nodded. He had fought with less before. "Then we make our own. Hannah, James, find anything we can use. Tools, pipes, chemicals. Anything." The twins disappeared into the darkness. They knew how to move quietly. All soldiers did. David and Brian kept moving toward the raiders. They needed to see the enemy, to count them, to find their weaknesses. A security camera showed them the truth. The raiders were big men and women with hard faces and harder weapons. Plasma rifles, shock sticks, military-grade armor that civilian bullets would never break. They moved like soldiers, checking corners, covering each other. 34, Brian counted. Well-armed, well-trained. They know what they are doing. "Criminals with military training," David said. "Probably former soldiers who went bad. This will not be easy. It never is." The twins came back. Hannah carried a long metal pipe and 2 bottles of cleaning chemicals. James had a fire tool that shot hot flames and a bag full of small metal balls used for some alien sport. "Best I could find," James said. "It will do." David took the pipe. It felt good in his hands. Heavy, solid. A weapon? Plan? Hannah asked. David's mind was working fast. He had fought in buildings before. He knew how to use tight spaces against a bigger force. We cannot beat them in a straight fight. So we do not fight straight. We make them scared. We make them confused. We make them think there are more of us than there are. He pointed down a side corridor. "Brian, can you control the doors in Section 4? "Yes." "Good. Lead half of them that way. Seal doors behind them. Open doors in front. Make them go where you want." "Like sheep in a maze," Brian said with a small smile. "Hannah, James, you take the maintenance tunnels. Hit them from above, from behind, from places they do not expect. Do not stay to fight. Hit and run. Make them scared of shadows." "What about you?" Hannah asked. David's face was stone. "I will be the one they see. I will be the one they chase. While they look at me, they will not see you." It was a simple plan. Simple plans worked best when everything was chaos. The first raiders came around the corner 3 minutes later. They were laughing, joking. They thought this would be easy. A school full of weak aliens. No real security. Nothing to fear. David stepped out of the shadows. He did not look like much. One man with a metal pipe. No armor. No gun. Just a human standing in a hallway lit by red emergency lights. The raiders stopped laughing. "Hey!" The leader called out. "You must be one of those human students. Smart thing to do is drop that pipe and come with us. We might let you live." David did not speak. He just stood there, watching them with eyes that had seen too much death to fear it anymore. "Or you can't be stupid," the leader said. He raised his rifle. "Your choice." David moved. He was fast. Faster than they expected. The pipe caught the first raider across the face before anyone could fire. David did not stop. He was behind the second raider before the first one hit the floor, using the man's body as a shield. Chaos exploded. The raiders shot at each other trying to hit him. David kept moving, kept hitting, kept using their numbers against them. In tight spaces, big groups became clumsy. They could not shoot without hitting their own people. 3 raiders fell before David took a hit. A shock stick caught his shoulder, making his whole arm go numb. He dropped, rolled, came up swinging with his good arm. The pipe cracked bone. Then he ran. The raiders chased him. That was the plan. While they ran after one man, they did not see the twins drop from the ceiling behind them. Hannah and James worked like a machine with 2 parts. Hannah moved left. James moved right. They hit fast and disappeared into side doors before the raiders could turn around. 2 more enemies fell. Brian played with the station like it was a musical instrument. Doors opened and closed. Lights went on and off. Speakers made sounds in empty rooms. The raiders started shooting at nothing, wasting ammunition, getting more scared with every passing minute. "What the hell is this place?" one raider screamed. "How many are there?" The answer was 4. But the raiders thought it was many more. The battle went on. Minutes felt like hours. David was bleeding from a wound in his leg now. Hannah had a burn across her back from a near-miss plasma shot. James was limping. Brian had taken a hit to the head and blood ran down his face. But the raiders were falling faster. In a storage room on level 3, Hannah found herself surrounded. 3 raiders blocked the only door. She had nothing left but her fists and her will. "Got you now," the biggest raider said. He was grinning. "I like it when they fight back." Hannah did not waste breath on words. She attacked. She broke the first man's knee with a low kick. The second one swung at her face, but she was already moving inside his guard, her elbow finding his throat. The third one grabbed her from behind. James appeared from nowhere. He had crawled through an air duct, silent as a ghost. His hands found the third raider's neck. The man dropped. "Thanks," Hannah gasped. "Always," James said. On level 5, David faced the raider leader alone. They stood in a wide hallway, both of them bloody and tired. The leader had lost his rifle somewhere. He held only a long knife now. "You are good," the leader admitted. "Better than I thought. But you are hurt. You are slow. You cannot win." "Maybe," David said, "but I do not need to win. I just need to stop you." They fought. Knife against pipe. The leader was skilled, but David was desperate. Desperate men fight harder. Desperate men do not fear pain. The knife found David's side. It went deep. David felt the cold metal inside him, felt his blood pour out. But he did not stop. He grabbed the leader's arm and held it, trapping the knife in his own body. "What are you doing?" The leader screamed. "Keeping you still," David said through clenched teeth. Then he brought the pipe down on the leader's head. The fight ended. David fell to his knees. His blood made a pool around him. The red emergency lights made it look black. "Brian," he said into his communicator. "Status: 32 raiders down. 2 others ran back to their ship. They are leaving." Brian's voice was rough. "We did it. Help is coming. TDF ships will be here in 4 minutes." "Good." David let himself fall backward. The floor was cold against his back. "Good." In the shelter zone, Grace heard the news. She was already running before Brian finished speaking. Her medical bag bounced against her hip as she sprinted through the halls. She found David first. He was lying in his own blood, barely breathing. His face was white as paper. "You stupid, brave fool," Grace said. Her hands were already working, pressing on the wound, stopping the blood. David opened his eyes. He actually smiled. "Did we win?" "You won. Now shut up and let me save your life." She worked fast. She had done this so many times before. On battlefields, in destroyed buildings, in the backs of ships flying through enemy fire. This was what she did. This was who she was. David would live. She would make sure of it. The TDF ships arrived 3 minutes later. Soldiers in clean armor ran through the halls that 4 veterans had painted with Raider blood. They found the 8 remaining Raiders hiding in the docking bay, too scared to move. The battle for Station Covenant was over. 4 humans against 34 Raiders. 4 teachers, 4 students, 4 soldiers who never really stopped being soldiers. And the whole galaxy was about to learn what that meant. The medical bay was too small for everything Grace needed to do. She turned the shelter zone into a hospital instead. Beds were made from chairs pushed together. Lights were moved to shine on the wounded. Alien students who had never seen blood before became her helpers. James lay on a table in the middle of the room. His left side was torn open, a deep cut from a plasma blade. The wound glowed faintly at the edges where the hot blade had burned his flesh. Grace had seen wounds like this before. They were bad. Very bad. Hannah stood beside her brother, holding his hand. She had her own injuries, burns and cuts that needed treatment. But she would not leave James. The twins had come into this world together. They would not be separated now. "Stay with me, James," Grace said. Her hands moved fast, cleaning the wound, stopping the bleeding. "Do not you dare die. I have kept you alive through worse than this." James tried to smile. "Have you? That time on Colony 12. You had a piece of metal through your chest. I fixed that. I remember. It hurt. This will hurt too. But you will live. I promise." David was on another table nearby. He was sleeping now, his wound closed, his vital signs stable. He had lost a lot of blood, but Grace had fixed him first. He would have a new scar to add to his collection. Brian sat in a corner with his head wrapped in white cloth. He was awake but quiet, which was strange for him. The hit to his head had been hard. Grace would need to watch him for the next few days. Professor Velas moved through the room, helping where they could. The professor's lights were showing colors Grace had never seen before. They kept changing, like the sky during a storm. "Dr. Kim," the professor said quietly, coming to stand beside her. "You said you never took a life." "Not now, Professor. I am busy. Please. I need to understand something." Grace's hands did not stop. She could talk and work at the same time. She had learned that skill long ago. "Then talk while I work." Those 4 people. They went out there knowing they would probably die. They fought not for money, not for land, not for any belief. They fought for strangers. For species they had never met. For beings who were afraid of them. Yes. Why? Grace was quiet for a moment. She was closing a vein inside James's body, a tiny thing that required all her focus. When she finished, she spoke. "You asked what the most important act was, Professor. Taking a life, we said. But I think that was only half of the answer. What is the other half?" "Saving one." She looked up from her work. Her eyes met the professor's strange gaze. Behind her glasses, Grace's eyes were tired but strong. Humans can do terrible things. We know that better than anyone. But we can also do this. We can throw ourselves into danger for people we do not know. We can fight against impossible numbers because someone has to. We can choose to protect, even when protecting means dying. James coughed. Grace's attention snapped back to him immediately. She adjusted something, gave him something for the pain. His breathing became easier. David, Hannah, James, Brian. They raised their hands because they have killed. But they killed so that others could live. That is the weight they carry. That is what you saw in that lecture hall. Not monsters, protectors. Professor Velas watched as Grace's steady hands pulled James Lee back from death. The lights under the professor's skin settled into a warm glow like sunrise. "And you, Dr. Kim? You said you carry the weight of those you could not save." Grace's eyes became wet, but her hands stayed steady. A medic's hands never shook. Every single one. I remember every face, every name, every person who slipped away while I tried to hold them here. She tied off a thread inside James's body. But I also remember every life I did save. And on my worst nights, when the faces of the dead come to visit, I hold on to that. I hold on to the ones I kept. She stepped back from the table. Her hands were red with blood. James's blood. But his chest was rising and falling normally now. The worst was over. He will live, Grace said. He is too stubborn to die. Hannah let out a sound that was half laugh and half cry. She leaned down and pressed her forehead against her brother's. Tears ran down her face. "Thank you," Hannah whispered. "Thank you. Do not thank me. Thank your brother for being strong." Professor Velis stood in the middle of the chaos. Blood on the floor. Groans from the wounded. One tired medic and her helpers working to save lives. This was not what the professor had expected when they started teaching this class. This was not what they expected from humans. "Dr. Kim," the professor said slowly, "in my lecture, I asked a simple question. But I think I asked the wrong one. What should you have asked?" The professor's lights flickered with new patterns. Not fear anymore. Not confusion. Something that might have been understanding beginning to grow. "I should have asked, what are you willing to die for?" Because I believe, for humans, that question and the one I asked are two sides of the same thing. Grace looked around the room. At David, sleeping on his table, scars new and old covering his body. At Brian, quiet and watching with sharp eyes. At Hannah and James, the twins who had never let go of each other. "You are starting to understand us, Professor." The TDF soldiers outside finished securing the station. The surviving raiders were taken away in chains. They would face justice for what they had tried to do. But in the shelter zone turned hospital, 5 humans who had been feared as killers were finally seen as something else. Not monsters, protectors. 1 month passed. Professor Velis stood before a full lecture hall. The class had grown bigger. Students from all over the station had asked to attend. They sat in the seats, hundreds of different species, all waiting to hear what the professor would say. The 5 humans sat in their usual places. James's arm was still in a healing sleeve, but he was alive and getting better. The other species no longer moved away from the humans. Some of them sat close, like they wanted to be near the strange beings who had fought for them. "Today," Professor Velis began, "we will talk about a topic that has changed my own understanding. We will talk about humanity." The professor's lights glowed warm and steady. I asked, on the first day, who among the humans had taken a life. 4 raised their hands. I was shocked. I thought I was teaching monsters. Velis paused. I was wrong. Humans are not monsters. They are something much more complicated. They are a species that holds inside them the power to do terrible violence and incredible sacrifice. They are killers, yes, but they are also protectors. They are the species that will fight to death for strangers, and then cry for the enemies they had to destroy. The professor's lights shifted to something soft and kind. Dr. Kim told me that the most important act a human can do is taking a life or saving one. I now understand that for humanity, these are not opposites. They are the same promise, the same commitment to value life so much that they will do anything to protect it. Professor Velis looked at the 5 humans. I asked who had killed, but I should have asked who would stand between the innocent and danger. Who would give their life for others? The professor's voice became gentle. For humans, the answer is the same. And that, I think, is both their burden and their gift. Grace Kim smiled a small smile and said nothing. Some weights were worth carrying. Outside the lecture hall, the stars burned cold and bright. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders. Full of dangers, too, But somewhere in that great darkness, there were beings who would stand against the night, who would fight for those who could not fight for themselves, who would carry the terrible weight of taking lives so that others could live. They were human, and the galaxy was only beginning to understand what that meant. In the back of the lecture hall, a young Rilthian student watched the 5 humans with new eyes. This being had been born into a species that had not known violence for 6,000 years. They had never understood why some species fought, why some species killed. Now, maybe, they were starting to see. The Rilthian raised one of their 4 hands. Professor Velis nodded at them. Double quotes, yes. A question? Professor, I want to understand something. The humans fought for us. They almost died for us. But we were afraid of them. We moved away from them. We treated them like dangerous animals. The Rilthian's voice was small but clear. Why did they still protect us? Professor Velis looked at the humans. The question hung in the air like smoke. It was David who answered. His voice was rough, still weak from his healing wound, but his words were strong. Because that is what good people do. They protect, even when they are feared, even when they are hated, even when no one thanks them. He paused. You were scared of us. That is okay. Fear is natural. We scared ourselves sometimes. But being scary does not mean being bad. Sometimes the scariest things are the things that stand between you and the darkness. The Rilthian was quiet for a long moment. Then they did something no Rilthian had ever done before. They bowed to the humans. All 4 arms spread wide in the deepest sign of respect their species knew. Thank you, the Rilthian said. Thank you for being what you are. Grace felt tears in her eyes. Beside her, Hannah was crying openly. Even David's stone face showed something soft. This was why they did it. This was why they carried the weight. Not for glory, not for thanks, but for moments like this when someone understood. Professor Velis ended the class with simple words. Learn from the humans, not their violence, their courage, their willingness to sacrifice, their refusal to let innocent beings